Hi everybody, welcome to today's Thorium AMA. Like I mentioned before, if you have any questions, you can ask them on the Demonstration AMA GitHub channel and the YouTube chat. I'll be watching both of those, and yeah, let's dive right into it. I'm pretty sure I won't have to explain how to get Thorium up and running. It's hopefully easy enough. Just a quick agenda for this AMA. I'll try and answer your questions as I go. I'm going to start with just an overview of Thorium, how I put it together, why it is the way that it is, and yeah, any questions that you have as I'm going, go ahead and just throw those on those chats. So let's get started. First and foremost, what needs to be understood is that the inspiration for Thorium came from the space adventure centers that are all over the place in Utah. That's where I got the inspiration for it. That's actually how I started programming in the first place, was at one of those programming camps that they had. They would have just these kids that they would teach programming to, and then the kids would program the simulators, and then they'd grow up and keep programming stuff. I don't know, pretty cool. So that's how I got started, and these simulator controls are very... Oh, hang on, is the feed paused? Are you guys not getting the feed? Let me take a quick look. Make sure everything's good. Yeah, sorry if it's a little choppy. I don't have a super good internet connection, and I'm not very good at streaming in the first place. This is like the first time I've ever done this. Okay, so these simulator controls are designed for these experiences where they have these sets that they've constructed that actually look like this bridge of starships, and they give these roles to these students that come for these field trips to these space adventure centers, and then they play it out. So this, I mean, is all fairly similar to regular bridge simulation controls. The only difference is these simulations are very focused on the educational aspect of it, the social studies and the science and the team building and communication, and the drama is a big part of it too. The guy that started the first of these space adventure centers, his name is Victor Williamson, and he was doing it for his classroom, and it was kind of dry because he was just focusing on the sciencey aspects of it. They took a trip to Mars in their space simulator. But there wasn't any battle or anything. He realized it wasn't going very well, and so he decided to swap out his VHS, because this was way back when. He swapped out his VHS that was showing the main view screen for an episode of Star Trek where there was a Romulan warbird, and then they had to go and fight the Romulan warbird, and brought this element of drama to it. So that's why Thorium isn't quite so focused on the action aspect so much as the storytelling and the drama aspect of it. That's why it isn't an actual game engine like Artemis and Empty Epsilon where you can actually fly the ship around. That wasn't a focus. Focus was being able to allow the flight director to tell great stories and have this educational content built in. So that's kind of the overarching theme of why Thorium is the way that it is. Let's dive in and talk just a little bit about why Thorium is the way that it is in the actual controls itself. First off, I built Thorium intentionally with the ability to have multiple flights and multiple simulators in those flights at the same time. I was hoping to be able to use Thorium for joint flights where two simulators could occupy the same space and do battle with each other and stuff. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the right architecture in place for that. So yeah, let me just get into things. First off is the concept of a simulator. Over here in the simulator config where you can create these simulators, the simulator is the base unit for one of these experiences. It has almost all of the data about what's going on in the simulation is stored in the simulator or is referenced to the simulator. So it has things like the basic information, its name and layout and stuff, and then a couple of miscellaneous things for how specifically you want to configure it. Simulators also have stations. Each station is not an individual computer control, but rather an abstract form of what a computer control could be, if that makes sense. Because the idea is you have these simulators which have several different computers, and you might want to run the same station at multiple computers. And these stations have the same screens on them, they operate in the same way, they're just on different computers, so you can have two people working on the same thing at the same time. Or you could create a station for every computer on your bridge. It doesn't really matter. So one thing that is interesting, though, is the concept of a station set. Since they'll have, these space adventure centers will have different class sizes come in with different different number of students, they need to be able to readjust it quickly. And so that's why you have a station set, so you can set it up so that if you have 8 people on the ship, it gives you this many stations. If you have 10 people on the ship, then you have this many stations, and you can easily redistribute the cards that way. That's something that the simulator controls didn't have before, but Thorium does. Question, if 2 people are running the same station, do their actions show on each station? That really is the goal, to make it so that it's totally reactive between the 2 stations. There are going to be some things that, for a good reason, are not synced between the 2 stations. For example, if I'm typing out a message on one station, it shouldn't automatically type out on the other station. So there are some things that are kept separate, but for the most part, the way that Thorium's architected, if I make a change on one station, it should immediately reflect on the other station. So if I send a message, for example, or decode a message or something like that, then it should show up that way on the other station. So does that answer your question? Hopefully it does. Yeah, anyway, stations have cards, and you can assign cards to each station, and the card is just an individual screen. Widgets, which are like cards that can just show up on any screen. A couple of other things to differentiate stations, but that's basically the gist. They have cards. That's it. Then we have decks and rooms, which let you just outline what the ship is supposed to look like. As a fun aside, one feature that I really wanted to have in Thorium was a Marauder's map, if you understand, like from Harry Potter, where you can see everybody on the ship. You can flip through the decks and see little dots moving around. Hopefully someday we'll be able to get that feature added. It's not there yet. Another question, what the executive means. On this command station, there's this executive checkbox. That's actually just used for the THX system. When you activate the THX system, everybody's screens turn into this charging screen where you have to charge up each client, each computer on the bridge, except for the command station. It gets to see the progress of everything, and then they can click the activate button when everybody's done charging. So the executive checkbox determines that. We'll talk about the THX later. It's a system, no, not DMX, THX. Yeah, we can talk about the THX later. That's the thing, is a lot of the things that you'll see in these controls, like the THX, like some of these other systems, are throwbacks to those simulator controls that existed before Thorium at these Space Adventure Centers. So, yeah. Thorium lets you add systems to the simulator, and these systems are what give specific features and capabilities to Thorium. If you don't have a specific system added to your simulator, then the card for that system isn't going to work. So the card is just the view that you have, and then the system provides the functionality. Then we have a couple of other things: inventory, crew, assets for pictures of the ship, 3D models, and side shots and stuff. You can upload these yourself. Just as a quick heads up, if you're going to upload anything, make sure that it relatively matches what already exists. So for the top view, make sure that your ship image is in the same orientation and looks it's roughly the same size, that kind of thing. Same thing with these object models. I don't want to change that. With these object models, you want to throw it into Blender and resize it so that it's the correct size. Yeah, when we're talking about installing the system, are we referring to, that's a question that was just asked, are we talking about installing Thorium itself or installing a system in the simulator? while you answer that question, I'm going to just keep going through here really quick. Yeah, most of this is just extra stuff that I can talk to a little bit more in depth, but let's actually dive into things a little bit more. One thing I'm going to dive into depth to is the mission config. Okay, I'll talk about installing Thorium itself in a minute. When it comes to question about resizing meshes, I just do it the best I can. Thorium is pretty constrained with the way that its meshes work for the 3D models and stuff. So I typically just have a single mesh. I merge it together if it's in multiple pieces and just scale it all together. So I really don't know Blender that well. That's part of why Thorium doesn't support 3D a whole lot, is because I'm not very good at it. But it does a little bit, so you know, that's cool, I guess. One thing I'll point out right now is sets. Because simulators are separate from the actual constructed physical set that you'll be operating in, a simulator is a definition of like a class of ship. So in Star Trek you have the Galaxy class ship, and then instances of the Galaxy class ship are the Enterprise and other things like that. In Thorium you have your simulators, which are classes of a type of simulator, but you could actually use that same simulator config in multiple sets. If you were like one of these space adventure centers and you had 4 simulator sets, you could use the same simulator config in any of those sets. But you want to be able to make it so that when you start up your flight, you take whatever simulator you're running and whatever station set you're running, and you automatically assign all of the stations to whatever clients they're supposed to be on. I don't know if that made any sense. The idea is I have this set here that I've created for this simulator, and I can choose the station set and any of these stations, and then I can choose which client that's assigned to, and then when the simulation starts, you just click on the set and it automatically turns on all of the clients for that particular set. Let me make sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay, cool. I think that's everything that I'm going to cover right here. If you want to know about any of these other features more specifically, I'm more than happy to talk about that. Yeah, station sets are super malleable. One thing to keep in mind is when you activate a station set, it's going to take whatever the name of the station set is and slap it onto your simulator. So when I activate this set when I start a flight, it'll change the name of my simulator to Voyager. So make the name of your set whatever the name you want your simulator to be, and then the name of your simulator here, which is the same thing. But make this the whatever class of ship it is. Okay, let's actually start a flight. It's pretty straightforward. You just click this new flight button. You can change the name of your flight if you want to keep track of it for later on. If you want to pause it and then come back to it, you just name it, and that's all you have to do. Choose the simulator you want to run, choose the station set, you pick a mission. Missions are just sequential steps of actions that you want to perform at specific points during the mission. So I'll just use this, I don't know, it doesn't matter which one. I can actually add another simulator at this point, but like I said earlier, having multiple simulators on the same flight doesn't actually do a whole lot. It just makes it a little easier for you to access the simulator later on. So we're not going to worry about that. We'll just start the flight. And then just to demonstrate this, let me open up a client really quick. I can click on this set and it will automatically assign me to that command station. And there we go. There I am. This is actually the station or the simulator that I use for development. So there's going to be all kinds of stuff thrown all over the place just because I go willy-nilly and crazy and stuff. Yeah, the client itself is pretty straightforward. I don't know that there's a whole lot that needs to be explained here. The participants, the crew logs in, and then they can change their cards using the card switcher depending on what layout you have, and then the widgets up here, which are handy, and then each station, hang on a sec, I'm going to change the layout. This one's just a little bit constrictive. We'll do that one. Hopefully this is good. Looks good to me. I'll just activate the training. So every screen has training. Well, most every screen. I have missed a couple, but there's that. The Space Adventure Centers actually like having training recorded by their flight directors, and so Thorium does have the ability for you to assign training to specific stations. It's a training for the entire station, so you would have to make sure that you don't adjust the cards, but that lets you have a video that you show on the screen or a little audio player that you can play in order to learn how to use the stations. So that's a handy feature. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the core. The core is definitely one of the most... going back to training, is there a way to automate the training so it steps through them one by one? When you say steps through them, are you talking about the cards or the individual controls? As far as I know, there isn't any automated way of doing it. The most automated way that you could do it is having a video showing you using the controls, and then you it just shows you what's going on. I'm guessing that you're meaning, like, if I were to come here to the computer core screen, for example, and activate the training here, gives me this little explanation, and then I come over here and it tells me to do certain actions, like, oh, I want to click on this terminal, and then as soon as I click on the terminal it goes to the next step, and then, oh, I click on that button and then it goes to the next step and stuff. Yeah, actually, when it comes to training, so the question is, are users told to click the help on each card? And yeah, that is the case. So if I were to click this begin training button here on the very first screen, it says that there's on-screen training, you should go through the training at the beginning, and then here's the widget, and this icon opens the, oh, that's for opening the training on an individual widget. Let's see, what else? Yeah, so it says that you want to access training on every screen. So that it's explained here. The nice thing about this on-screen training is during the course of the mission, if you forget how to do something, you can just pull up that training. So that's nice. As far as going to the next training step, automatically when you complete a step, that's not in place. I don't plan on having that in place. That'd be a little bit complicated. I'm not going to worry about that. They can click the next button just fine. Yeah, let's talk about core, unless there are any other questions about cards, because this is basically all I'm going to talk about cards, unless there are any more questions about it. Okay, no? I think we're good. Okay, sorry for the pause, just making sure that I'm all caught up. I think the core is one of the most daunting things that people experience when they come to Thorium for the first time, because especially if you go to the main core, it's just like, wow, there's so much stuff here and it's all squished because I have a small screen. Yeah, I actually regret having the main core and aux core for that matter. This is just because those old simulator controls that existed ages ago, they still exist in some form, I suppose. This is how they looked. Let me pull up one really quick. I think, there we go. So this is what one of those cores used to look like. There was a sensors grid here. It's invisible right now. So there's the sensors, and then they have all of the stuff necessary over here. So yeah, that was good times. Thorium lets you use these cores if you really want to, or you could just load up a dynamic core with all the different configurations that you want. So I can have that and that and that and whatever. But that's not the way that I recommend using the core. I don't think you need to use it that way. Yeah, core is just for the flight director. Core is not used for anybody else. None of the other crew uses it. Or the flight director's assistant, who we call second chair in the industry. Yeah. Anyway, I suggest for new flight directors or anybody using Thorium, just use the next core. Or if you really want to, use the dynamic core. The next core is really nice because it gives you access to your sensors grid, which you're going to be accessing often. This command section here that gives you the alert level, dice if you're into that. Sorry, it's only a D6. All of these actions that you can perform on stations. The core feed, which gives you contextual notifications. So if something happens, like an actionable event, like say, for example, give me just a second. If I were to come here to the flight control station, and ask for a course calculation to Mars, then this core feed is going to show up here saying calculating course, and then I can click on it and it gives me the controls right here. Yeah, sorry, Kilted Klingon. If you really want D20, I'm sure that we can manage something. It gives me the controls here for the navigation, and I can access it and send it off right there, and then ignore it. It goes away. So long. And then as soon as they type in the coordinates, I'm just going to type in random stuff. It sends another actionable item here that I can click on and see if they actually completed that successfully. And then I could come on as like the main computer or something and say, we've now set course for Mars, or just kidding, course has been set incorrectly, whatever. So I didn't even have to pull up my navigation core here, it just showed up right here in the core feed. Awesome. Second reason why you don't need the big core anymore is because of the timeline, which lets you have your mission scheduled out with all of the individual steps. Oh, sorry, how did you get calculate on by default? Let me pause for just a second just to make sure I get these questions answered. Okay. Oh, hang on just a second. Okay, let me go back really quick just to answer this question. The question is, how do you get calculate on by default? And I'm guessing that's about the navigation screen where you have to calculate the coordinates. Since there are so many different ways to configure simulators and systems, yeah, you have to go in and kind of play around with it in order to get it all right the way you want it. So let me come to the navigation system here, which is what controls navigation. And over here, I can change the name and the display name. Those have different properties. I can't remember which is used when. You can set the power levels necessary. You can adjust the heat rate. I don't know why navigation has heat because it actually doesn't, but that's fine. It's there, whatever. The location is used for damage reports and storing inventory and that kind of thing. So you can set rooms for systems. You can set up damage reports, which is really complicated. I won't talk about that right now. And then these system-specific things. Just in time, this is what you're looking for. Make it so that this is checked on this system-specific area. And then that'll make it so that they can actually calculate the course. Cool, cool? Cool, cool. Let me go back to this flight really quick, and we'll talk more about the core. In fact, I'll talk about the timeline again. Yeah, so if you create missions beforehand, which I'll demonstrate how to create a quick little mission, this can take care of a lot of the automated steps that have to happen as part of a mission. So in this case, it's going to set my Army contacts, which changes all of the contacts over here that I can drag onto the sensors array. You can create the scan answer presets, and you change the view screen card. I can click open the details and see what's going on here. So this is going to set those scan answers and these sensor contacts. So if I hit go, boom, it added that. If I go to the sensors, sensors core, it's a very big sensors core. Let me make it just a little bit smaller. We've got the information here that gives me automated answers. Well, not automated answers, but if they scan for something as part of the mission, I have the answers to that right here. And then I can just send that as a scan answer. Cool. And then it can add objectives. So if I were to go to the objectives, whoops, not the phaser core, objectives core. And it's going to send process data and send a long-range message. Let me go to the convo core, which is the best long-range communication card or core. Just always use convo. It'll make your life a lot easier. And then this changes the view screen card again. Obviously, this isn't a real mission timeline because I don't have a good one, but this does demonstrate it. So we'll see the objective show up here and the message show up here. There it is. And you can see that there. Ta-da! And that's the end of my timeline, so that's all. Yeah, so between the core feed and the timeline, there's not a whole lot left for you to do with the rest of your controls. I mean, you can pull them up whenever you need, but for the most part, you can rely on those two for a majority of what you're doing during a mission. One thing that is kind of a necessity is understanding and knowing what all of the core components are. So get familiar with those so that you know which to switch to at whenever you need to do a thing. Yeah, any questions about the core? I'm going to wait until everybody's done typing. Kilted Klingon asks, how tightly coupled are the timeline elements? Can you be just a little bit more specific? And while you're being more specific, one thing that the timeline does not have is it doesn't have the concept of a simulator. So it's not going to know whether a simulator is capable of doing anything. If it, for example, if I try and, I can't think of anything right now. But if the timeline tries to get you to do something that your simulator isn't capable of doing, then it's just not going to do that. Another thing to consider is that the timeline is stateless, which means, yes, if step 3 is skipped, then step 4 can be done. This does give a couple of limitations. I can't think of, so Bacon Commander says, like, if a timeline requires stealth and we have no stealth, I can't think of a time or a timeline action that can be performed that requires stealth, but that is kind of the context. For example, if I were trying to send a long-range message and we have no long-range system. There you go, that's an example. So Kilted Klingon asks, if step 3 is skipped, can step 4 be done? Yes, that is the case. You absolutely can. You can go back and redo timeline steps however you want, doesn't matter. But that does mean I can't do things like move contacts on my sensor grid using the timeline. That's something the flight director has to do themselves because there's no concept of state. The timeline doesn't know what the current state of the simulation is in, and so it can't react to that. You know, I've never thought, the question is, can results from a step be fed into another step, like passing variables into a function? That would be kind of cool, and I would be all over doing something like that. But again, there's something kind of nice about being able to just skip steps and not have to worry about one step being fed into the other. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's possible to do it that way, where they feed into each other, but if you skip a step, then it just kind of jumps to the next step or pretends like the previous step was executed. So there definitely are some trade-offs and limitations there. When it comes to branching logic in a mission step, that's something that the flight director is going to have to handle themselves. One recommendation that I give is to have separate timelines for each branch of a mission. So suppose that part of a mission is to go and check out a distress call or follow a lead about a pirate attack. When they get to that particular point in the mission, depending on what decision the crew makes, I could just come here and switch which mission I'm running, and then it follows that path. And then it could merge back together again. But a lot of that stuff does have to be handled by the flight director, yes. Okay. Yeah, since we're talking about missions so much, let's dive into actually creating a mission really quick. Missions are not necessarily trivial to make. It will take a good amount of effort, but totally worth it, I guess. I'm going to make a mission. We'll call this one Stormfront, and can put some mission information in here. So this is a mission about a small country wishes to join the Federation. You are being sent to negotiate terms of them joining. Actually, more specifically, you're being sent to guard the ambassador who will negotiate. What could possibly go wrong? It's not terms of surrender. They're going to be joining the Federation, which means they get all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto. Okay. Missions, again, are built on a series of steps. So over here we have the steps of this mission. Every mission starts with a first step called initialize, which is where I'm supposed to set up all of the things for the rest of the mission. I can edit the step by changing the name and putting in a description. These descriptions are really helpful for helping the flight director know what's supposed to go on at a certain step during the mission. So let's go through this really quick. I'm going to just set up a couple of things. these are all of the different actions that you can perform. This is by no means an exhaustive list. If there are more actions that you think you should be able to perform, go ahead and ask, and somebody can add that in so that you can add these. Yeah, and they're sorted by the system or the general idea of what's going on. So I can add Army contacts here. I can set up a delay for how long it should take before this action happens, so that way you can set up some sequences. Let me come in here and change the name to, what's the name of the ship? I can't remember the name of the other ship. I'll just call it Montgomery. And we'll give it a logo. That looks like a good logo. And we'll give it a picture. That looks like a good picture. And call it good. And then we can add another one. This is a bad guy ship, but shh, you don't know that they're bad guy yet. Make it just a little bit bigger. Okay. Do you have to use the drop down to add an action, or can you type one in? I mean, you can use the drop down and then type to search. That's about as good as it gets. I mean, yeah, I don't know exactly how you type it in. Are you talking like type ahead kind of deal? Could do something like that maybe. Let's see, what else do I want to add? I can set up my targeting classes. This is not going to add ships. Oh wait, it will. No, it doesn't. Yeah, this is a little screwy. It looks like a bug. I'll have to fix that. But we will add this guy because he's a bad guy and we're going to shoot at him. So we'll just have that one target for now. And then I want to break a system at the beginning of the flight just to make sure damage control has something to do. We'll break one of the shield systems because they don't need that, right? Right? Yeah, I'm not really sure what we mean by if there's one missing, can you just type one? And I don't think that there's any crew-related timeline action, so you can't kill crew members with the timeline. Sorry. And let me throw an objective on. There's a difference between objectives and tasks. Objectives are they just say, this is the thing that you should do during your mission, and tasks are specific actions that they can perform. So let's see. This title is going to be Go to Lycia. Set a course and activate engines to go to Lycia. That's the name of that system. And cool. Yeah, I'll answer that question about where the server stores the assets you upload in just a minute. Yeah, there's all kinds of different actions that you can perform. I'm just going to call it good at this, and then we'll add another step, which is when they activate their engines. Most of the timeline actions that you're going to add, most of the steps are probably going to be doing something with the view screen. So we change the view screen card, and this lets you choose any one of these cards. Yeah, and you can go to the view screen core in order to play around with the view screen cards, see exactly which ones do what and how they work and stuff. I'm just going to use this stars one. I'll make sure that I switch to the stars before they activate their engines. Or if I wanted to be really clever, well, I'm not going to be really clever, not for this, but that way when they activate their engines, we'll see them slowly ramp up speed and stuff. And then I could add any number of other things. I'll add a sensors process data so that it just shows up on their screen and they can read it out loud instead of me having to tell it to them as the computer or as the chief engineer, as some character. This is a good way to explain what's going on, but have them be the ones explaining it. No, the ship is now on course to Lycia. There we go. So that gives them a little push, says activate your engines because you're on course, that kind of thing. I could continue adding steps, but I'm not really going to worry about it. One thing that's really nice about this is I can export the mission to transfer it to another Thorium installation or just to save it. And I can export the mission script, which I can actually print. right here, and it gives me this paper script that I can see and follow, showing me all of the information going on at any given point during the mission, all the things that are happening. So that's kind of nifty. Okay, yeah, let's talk about assets, because something that you're going to be doing a lot is adding videos. Call this just video, vidi, cool. So if I'm changing the view screen card to video, you'll need to upload videos and graphics if you're using not the video, but the, for example, ship view, which actually is just a picture view. I can show any of these pictures. I need to be able to upload these, and you can easily do that from here. Or you can go to the assets config right here, not the missions config, the assets config, and you can go into any one of these folders and upload assets or view assets or do anything you want with them. Here's just a random movie. So let me upload an asset really quick. I don't know if I have any movies. Recommendation for videos so you don't break the client or the core? I don't know. A lot of people have had success with it. I haven't really had any problems. When it comes to resolution or file type, I know a lot of people do use... Sorry, my computer's freaking out right now, so sorry if the stream gets janked. I just want a nice video like this one. There, upload that. When it comes to the optimal resolution, people have had success with 1080p. I think 720p is just fine, but if you really have to go full screen, like full HD, then 1080p should be okay. Just recognize that it's going to be running in a web browser, and that means that there are going to be some, like if your computer's not beefy enough, it might freak out and not work properly. Just be aware of that. When it comes to file type, you'll notice that I uploaded a .mov file and it's not working, which is a real shame, you know? Come on, Alex. Rookie mistake. So MP4 is a good file type. OGV is also a good file type, and WebM, I think, is another one that should work. Yeah, let me upload another video that actually will be nice. Like this one. That's a nice video. And it's not showing up either. Just refresh that and see if it shows up now. No? Ah, that's a real shame. Okay. Yeah, so all of the videos are streamed from the server, and it's not particularly clever with the way that it streams them. So I definitely would recommend smaller video files if at all possible, especially if your network has high latency or is relatively slow. This is part of why I do not encourage or suggest people to run Thorium over the internet, because it's just not well, it doesn't work very well for slower networks. It's designed to be run on a local area network. Yeah. So that's the assets. If I were to come into this, oh, let me pull this over here. If I were to go into my documents folder, there's a Thorium folder, and right here is where all of the data for Thorium is stored. So here are all of the assets, movie right there. If I were to upload that movie, this one here, we would see that it gets stuck in this movies folder. Oh, just kidding, it doesn't get stuck in that movies folder because I am running the development version of Thorium, so it gets stored in a different place, but it's not too far away. Movies, there it is. So you can see that movie that I uploaded there. So that's that. Oh, I'm not done yet with that folder though. Let's go back here. Right here, this snapshot file is one of the most important files in all of Thorium. This is your database. This stores all of your data for Thorium. I can actually open this up. This is going to take just a little while. Maybe I won't open it this way. I'll open it this way. You can open this sucker up and you can see all of the data that Thorium stores for all of the things in Thorium. If there are any developers out there, I'm sorry, it is not particularly elegant. It is just a JSON blob. But it has all the data in there and it works well enough, so I haven't had any reason to change it. Make sure this snapshot does not go away. If you've got a good setup for your simulator for everything, then just make a copy of the snapshot file and put it somewhere safe so that nothing blows up. Or if it does blow up, you can just throw the snapshot back in and hey, everything's great. That's why I store a snapshot restore right next to it. So if there's ever a problem with your snapshot file, you can restore it from this file unless this file also got broken. So that's why you should have a third backup somewhere else. Okay, cool. Did I cover missions and assets well enough? Does anybody have any other questions about missions and assets? Is there anything that I missed? Any questions that I missed? I will take the fact that nobody's typing to mean either the stream is broken or we're all good. Yeah, definitely, like this is going to be a cursory overview. I'm not going to be able to explain how everything works. Okay, let's talk about damage reports. When a system gets damaged, report can automatically be generated by Thorium to give to the damage control officer, and then they can follow the steps of the report. There are two ways that this works. One of them is a legacy method, which I think is pretty cool still, but I do not recommend using. I'll show you how to use that really quick. We go to the damage reports core here, which is where we'll generate it from, and then the systems core is where I break systems. So let's break the forward shields. It shows up over here, and then I can just click this generate button and generate a report of whatever length I want. I'll make a long report, and it shows up here. I can actually edit this now. So if I wanted to, I could actually load a report from a text file on my computer, have that show up in there, and then send it over. Or I could just generate it. Looks like there's not a number there. That's interesting. Anyway, this is really nifty and really good, and it works just fine for the most part. Yeah, we'll talk about how to make sure that you can build out these damage reports in just a second. But this is not the recommended way of doing damage reports. There's a much better way that is easier for the flight director and still integrates with the same damage report card that the crew uses. It's called task reports. Ta-da! So if I damage a system and I want the crew to work on it to fix it, I can create a new task report for that system. So I'll choose the forward shields, and I'll say that this is a damage report, but you can also create research and development reports or engineering reports. And I can choose the length here, and it's basically the same, and then I give it a name. This will be the 4 shields repair. I'll hit the create button, and that creates this task report. The difference between this report and, let me make this bigger. The difference between this report and the damage reports is this is not a text-based report, it is a task-based report. So tasks is a relatively new feature that I've added to Thorium that takes actions that the crew can perform and codifies them, saying, okay, in order to perform this action, here are the different values that you can use for that action. And it also adds the ability to check and make sure that a specific action has been performed, and adds an easy way for the flight director to verify that for items that are difficult to automatically verify. So for example, the very first step is to remove the power from the 4 shield system. So I can do that as the flight director. I'll just put 0 in there, and then, dang it, it's not automatically verifying. I'll have to check on that. It should automatically be checking, okay, is there power in the 4 shield system? If there is, then it's not verified. If there is not power, then verify it. I can automatically verify it right here though. Boom. And then they need to send a damage team. So I can check and see that they sent the damage team and verify it here. And then when they make an internal call, verify it here, intership message, transfer cargo, etc., etc. Flight paused. Ah, that's a good point. That's probably it. That gets a lot of other people too. Okay, let me resume the flight. Set this back to 7. Try that again. Okay, and nah, wasn't because the flight's paused. Oh well. Anyway, but it's going to create a different damage report every time using these steps that we've created, okay? Let me show you how to set up damage report steps. So we'll come over here to our simulator config. Well, first, if you're working on the task reports, you have to create task templates. These task templates are what define the different steps that can be done as part of a repair. So I can find, for example, let's see. For whatever reason, you need to raise all the shields as part of a damage step. So for tasks, the preamble is what is said before the task. This isn't the actual action that needs to be performed, but this is an explanation for why the action should be performed. And pretty much every task template has a preamble. Another cool thing about tasks is you can perform macros when the task is complete, which is pretty slick. And then I can choose which type of report that this can be used in, a damage, R&D, or engineering report. And then I'll say that this is the raise shields to repair. So there's that. So now that I have these task templates defined, if you want to get a good list of repair templates, just click this Import Repair Templates button, and that'll pull in a bunch automatically for you that more or less match what the old damage report system had. Okay, then in the simulator config, if I come here to simulator, I can choose the task template actions, these task templates that I want to have as part of the damage report that applies to everything in the simulator. Again, this is just for task reports, so simulator damage reports there. I have that raise all shields here, and I just have to check this off. And then I can check and say whether it's required or not, which means it will appear on every damage report, regardless of whatever. If the import button doesn't exist, that means you've already imported them for the task templates. Just throwing that out there. So I can add damage reports for the entire simulator, which is what I recommend for that those imported task templates. Just add all of those to the simulator, and then they'll be available for every damage report. If there's specific things that you want to have for a specific system, like let's say you have to raise the shields in order to repair the shields, if you have multiple shields, don't add that if you only have one shield. But since I have multiple shields, that's fine. I'm sorry that it doesn't exist. We'll figure something out. Sorry, Justin, that those things aren't working. Anyway, I can add specific task templates here that will only apply to the shield systems, when the for shield system is damaged. So just to demonstrate this, I can come over here and remove this raise all shields. And then let me start a new flight, and we'll just demonstrate this really quick. Yeah, if you're ever making changes in the simulator config, make sure you restart the flight so that it takes your template simulator and creates a new simulator out of it. So choose the 4 shields, repair, and ta-da, somewhere on here there's going to be a raise all shields. Ta-da! So that's how we add that. Any question about the task reports? Cool. For the legacy damage report system, you have to go into the simulator config again, and then down here there's this damage reports area, and this is where it shows all of the systems that you have on your ship, as well as the simulator here at the top. And this works basically the same way, except you add required steps up here and optional steps here, and these are the only options that you have. So the tasks gives you more options for how to repair the ship, and it has that automatic verification, and it automatically checks if a step is even relevant, so it's not going to include steps that don't matter. It's super great. But here, if I wanted to add additional damage steps for anything, we can do that. Damage teams, good question. We can talk about that. Exocoms, we can talk about that too. Unless, yeah, exocomps are house elves. That is true. Okay. Yeah, so we've talked about damage reports. So, pull up the picture really quick. Sorry if you see random photos, like, oh, that's my wife. She's really sweet. I have this spaceship folder here, and I want to show you some pictures from spaceship, like this. So whenever we talk about panels, engineering panels, or repair panels, or whatever, this is what we're talking about. These panels that have dials and switches and knobs and cables and whatever. They're very physical, and for the most part, these panels are not connected in any way to the simulator controls. I think there was a time way back when somebody figured out how to connect these panels to the controls, but those controls don't exist anymore, so no panels connect to controls right now. Emmerich is actually working on a system to connect Thorium to software panels, not software panels, just panels in general, hardware panels. Software panels are actually a stopgap that we can use between now and when the hardware panel support is working to have these panels on the computer screen that you can use. So that's what a panel looks like. Not connected to Thorium in any way right now. So if you're going to have a panel in your damage report, you're going to want to use a generic task template or a generic damage step. And just type out the instructions that they have to perform on the panel. You just type whatever you want in there and it shows up. Software panels are kind of cool. They let you take some components here, like cables. Actually, that's not a good one. But I can take this cable output and this cable input, and I can take this light, and I need to have a power source, which not is actually a power source. It's the power of negativity. And if I hook that into that and grab this cable box, so you can drag from here to here to take the power from one thing and plug it into another thing, and then I want to take the power from this and plug it into that light, and then if I take a cable and plug it from there to there, the light turns on. Or I can hook, let me remove this connection. If I take this switch and plug it into that, and then take my cable blocks and plug it from that into that, then if I turn the switch on, it turns the light on, but if I disconnect that, then it doesn't turn the light on. So there's a lot of different little components that you can use to create your own software panels that you can add to stations, either individually or as a card with all of the software panels on them. And that gives you the ability to have a little bit of this flexibility for being able to construct your own little panels here. So that's kind of fun. Okay, there is a difference between damage and engineering reports. Damage reports show up on the damage control screen, and engineering reports show up on the engineering report screen. Other than that, there's no difference. Well, and for task reports, some things are going to, some task templates show up or are available for damage reports that aren't for engineering reports, and some are available for engineering reports that aren't for damage reports. Okay, damage teams. Really quick explainer for damage teams. This also is going to be the case for security teams and medical teams. As part of this repair, it's verifying, just kidding. I'm not going to go to the next step. As part of this repair, it wants me to create a damage team, so in order to do that, I have to say name of the team. That's not my name, that's the name of the team. So this is going to be the 4 Shields repair. Give them some orders like go repair the thing. The damage report will give me instructions for how the damage team is supposed to be used. And then I give them where it's to go and priority, and then I can choose the people that I want. The damage reports are going to specify what type of officer to include in the damage team. So we've got computer specialists and custodians and electricians and all sorts of people. So I've got to add those guys to this team, and then I can create the team, and then they go off and repair stuff. One cool thing about teams is once you have a team, you can actually message them directly from this messaging. So if I come here and send a message, how is the repair going? That shows up over here, and then if I go to the core, we'll see that that message appeared. Oh no! I need to make a little note here. This is supposed to be the new messaging core, not the old messaging core. So let me make a note real quick. Let me pull up that new messaging core. I can see that that question that they ask here, and I can reply to them as the damage team. So that's one nice thing about teams. In order for that to work, the station does have to be assigned a specific messaging group. So if I want to be able to talk to messaging or to damage teams, they have to be part of the damage team's messaging group. Yeah, so damage reports are for, I mean, really yeah. Blue Shadow is right. He says when it comes to the difference between engineering reports and damage reports, it depends on what functions you want. Research and development is for upgrading the ship. Damage reports are for repairing the ship. Engineering reports are just something different. This was a request the Space Adventure Centers asked for. They have different types of reports that may or may not necessarily be for damage, and they wanted to have that on a separate screen, totally separate, so that people could work on that. So it's just a separate category. Use it however you want to. When it comes to research and development, there actually is there are plans in the future to add upgrades, either using exocomps, which I'll get to in a bit, or the research and development reports, which will actually like literally change the functionality of the controls. But I haven't put any of those upgrades in yet, and I don't know when or if that's going to happen. But that is something that is a possibility. That would be kind of cool. Talk about exocomps really quick. I have no idea if I have an exocomps card somewhere, so I'm just going to add an exocomps card to the engineering screen. Actually, this might not work. Yay, it worked. Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So exocomps are little robots that you can send out into your ship in order to repair stuff. See if I have a picture of what the exocomp screen used to look like. I don't. That's a real shame. Used to be that you could actually see the exocomps moving around in the ship, but since Thorium has no concept of what a simulator looks like, because some simulators are going to be very large, some are going to be small, some are going to be Defiant-class ships, some are going to be Battlestar Galactica. I mean, I have no idea what it's going to be, so making it so that they can move around in the ship is very difficult. Without having a whole bunch of extra data that the flight director has to include. That's just a pain. So exocomps are very simple. I can specify the number of exocomps on a ship. If I want the exocomp to perform an action, I assign it to go to a system on the ship. So we'll send it to the THX-1138. I can put any number of these parts on it. And then hit deploy. And then we can see that it's going to go off wherever it's supposed to go to repair a thing. Yeah, and then as soon as it's done repairing, it'll come back. This is something that actually is integrated into the damage reports. If I were to have a damage report with the step that requires an exocomp, then it's not going to actually, like right here it says no repairs necessary, but if there were repairs necessary, it would spend the time actually repairing the thing instead of just going and coming back. So that's kind of nifty. Let's see. Yeah, I think we talked about the THX in the chat well enough. It's basically a massive energy device that I actually don't say anywhere what it does. So it doesn't talk about what it does in the training or anywhere else. I leave it entirely up to the flight director. So typically it's used as a massive planet-destroying weapon, but you could use it for travel, like it's a massive wormhole generator. You could use it for like a transporter relay that transports a whole bunch of people at the same time. You could, any number of things you could use it for. So I'll leave that entirely up to you and your creativity. Yeah, we're at the end of an hour. I'm more than happy to keep on talking about more things. If there's anything specific that you want to talk about, go ahead and ask that, and I will keep rambling on for a little while longer. Kilted Klingon, did we get to all of the things that you wanted to see and talk about? And is there anything that I can elaborate on more? I know that I did kind of jump around and talk about a lot of things. Tactical maps. We can talk about tactical maps. Really quick, I'll wait until Kilted Klingon is done typing, and then we can go from there. All right, quick overview of installing. Okay, let's just pretend that Thorium is not installed. And to do that, all I have to do is just change the name of this Thorium folder to Thorium whatever. When Thorium is first installed, it's going to look for the snapshot file in this Thorium folder. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create a default snapshot that has, I think it has the Voyager simulator, just a basic simulator in there, and it's going to download assets. So let's do that really quick. If you go to thoriumsim.com, go to this download tab, and we download Thorium macOS. So whenever there's an update to Thorium, do you need to update the kiosk as well? The answer to that is no. The kiosk actually is automatically updating, so it's just going to update in the background. You won't even notice it. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. I don't know. But the kiosk is very light, very simple. There's very few updates to it, so you don't have to worry about updating the kiosk at all. Some people use the kiosk for their core. Wait, do they? Maybe, no, I don't think it's possible to use the kiosk for your core. Don't try it. I don't think it really gives you that much flexibility. But the kiosk is nice because it locks down the user interface so that the user cannot quit or switch tabs or do anything else. And it also gives you the ability to restart and shut down the computer that the kiosk is running on. So that's handy. Okay, Thorium's downloaded. You just need to unzip it and open it up. And did it open up? Oh, it's verifying. Oh, okay. So if you're on a Mac, I don't sign my Thorium builds. So you're going to have to right-click on it and choose Open. I don't think this is a problem on Windows and Linux. Although Linux, if you're using desktop Linux, it does have an issue where it doesn't actually open up a terminal. So that makes it difficult to close if you're not comfortable with command lines. I suggest just opening it in command line if at all possible if you're using Linux. Okay, so we can open this guy up, and it's going to open up the... Oh, you couldn't see that. It was on the other display. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, so there was no snapshot found, so it creates the snapshot. It's going to load all of the assets for the first time, and then as soon as it's done, it starts up. It's freaking out because I'm running the development Linux at the same time, so let me close that really quick and start this guy up again. And it opened in the other window again. There. So now it's running. It should automatically open up your web browser. Oh, that's still broken. Sorry, guys. All right. Okay. And there it is. You can opt in to share some analytics. You don't have to. Just whatever you want. Yeah. And then you should be all set. You can actually start a flight right now with the Voyager simulator and go to town just from as soon as it's loaded up. If you want to adjust it or change it or add your own simulator, you can do that as well. Does that answer your question, Kilted Klingon? Yeah, I had to put it on some port because I didn't want to make it so that you had to have administrator access to run Thorium. So 1337 was a sensible default. Yeah, Blue Shadow mentions that he made a launch script. He or she? Blue Shadow, I don't think I know your gender. They made a launch script for Linux that automatically opens a terminal if you don't run it from one. Yeah. Blue Shadow, can you post a link to your launch script for Linux, and I'll include that in the description of this video later on. Thank you very much for that, by the way. That's very helpful. Okay, cool. Let's dive into tactical maps really quick. Tactical maps are just maps of icons that you can move around and place wherever you want and animate them and show it on the main view screen. That's the main purpose of tactical maps, is to show on the view screen. I will just create a map called Nebula Navigation. And the way that tactical maps work is with layers. We have to create these layers and then we can add different things to the different layers. So I'm going to have a background layer. And different layers can be different things. So I'm going to change this to be a image. And I want it to be stars. Yeah, tactical maps don't work very well at this resolution. I'm going to actually make it bigger. Here's a pro tip. If you right-click on the page and open up your dev tools by choosing Inspect, then you can click on this button here to emulate any screen size that you want. So I'm going to emulate 1080p, and that way I can see everything properly. Okay, so there's the background, and then I want to have a grid, and I can change that grid so that it's not such an awful color. We'll make that slightly transparent. And we will have nebula. This one's also going to be an image, and we will make it this navigation thing here. And then we'll have an object layer. And then the objects are the things that actually are going to be moving around. So I'm going to put the object layer underneath the nebula. And I need to change this to be objects. And then I can grab any of these old icons here. Look at them, they're so pixelated. Aren't they cute? I like them. I will just use a generic Starfleet logo. Don't sue me, CBS. And I will have a satellite be the destination. And then objects can be configured. You just have to click on an object in order to configure it. I can give it a label. So I will label this as the destination. Since there's no way for me to know what fonts you have on your computer, you've got to just know what they are and type in the name exactly right. That didn't work. I think there's a space. Bank, Gothic. There we go. And we'll make, ooh, that font size is making everything big, but that's fine. And you can change the size of things here. You can rotate them. You can change the opacity. Notice that once it gets to 50% opacity, it starts not being totally transparent. Or yeah, that's just to make sure that you can still see it, but it will be transparent on the view screen. And then the speed, which is how fast it moves when you drag it somewhere. Oh, I've got it. Oh, there's a bug in this version of Thorium, I think. Yeah. The version of Thorium that I'm using right now has a bug, but that'll be fixed in a future version. So you can't change the speed right now. Sorry, guys. My bad. But you can move it around using WASD keys. That's not working. That's janky. Ah, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm such a bad programmer. And then you can also make it so that it automatically moves when the crew uses their thrusters. So to make it move up, I just have to choose the up thruster or the forward thruster, as the case may be. And then reverse thruster will move them in the opposite direction. And then port and starboard. Yeah, this is actually pretty slick. In fact, let me change the rotation. Let me change this logo altogether. If I drag it off, it deletes it. And I'm going to have one that actually has an orientation. And I'm going to make it so that the yaw rotates it. And then the thruster direction is going to match the rotation of the ship. So up is going to move it that way. Down, or reverse is going to move it that way. Port and starboard. And then just to demonstrate this really quick, yeah, that'll work, I think. I think we'll be good here. So I'm going to start a new flight. Tactical maps have to be initialized slightly differently than regular cards, because suppose you have two flights running at the same time and both of them are using the same tactical map, you don't want them accessing each other's tactical map. So it has to create a copy of the tactical map. So I'm going to use the view screen core layout. Up here there are a lot of other core layouts that are helpful. I'm going to use the view screen one in order to, oh, I've got to create a view screen first. Yeah, let me do that here. So now this is not a view screen. Why are you? Oh, it's because, I'm sorry guys, I'm such a goofball. I was using the development version still. So let me add a view screen to this simulation really quick. View screen. There's that. Ain't it pretty? And then now that we have a view screen, I can assign it to that tactical map. So I choose the tactical map here. I have to load the tactical. It shows up down here in my preview. And then I hit the go button and that shows it on the main view screen. Here. Nifty. And then I should be able to use the thrusters to move this. So let me create a new window. Pro tip, you can use incognito windows to simulate extra clients. And then I have to assign this new client to be flight control. There it is. And then let me go back here to this tactical, or let me actually show this. And then you'll see that as I use the thrusters, oh, come on. Okay, let me try resuming the flight and make sure that that's not what it is. Oh, it's not working. I'll have to check and see why that's not working. There's probably some reasonable reason. Let's see if the rotation works. If I use... Nope, it didn't work. Ah, that's a real shame. Bummer, guys. I'm sorry. I'll have to check that out. Okay, there were a couple of questions really quick. Yeah, so when it comes to building out maps, Thorium actually does not have 3D space. As much as I would love for it to have 3D space, the only concept of space really is in these tactical maps, which are very much 2D, unless you were to do something clever with a 2-level system. Let me see if I can show you that really quick. I'm going to import a special tactical map that I have right here. And you can see that I have the ship over here. You can't really see that super well, but the ship is over here, and it's able to use the thrusters to move up and down and rotate and stuff. So that gives you the concept of 3D space, but it's still not true 3D. It's very much pseudo hand-wavy. That's how a lot of things in Thorium work. So no, Thorium doesn't have 3D space. If you're going to make a map, it's going to be in 2D, unless you do something like this, where you have a split screen type deal. Same with the sensors. That's the only other place where there's any concept of space, of dimension, is the sensor grid, and it's very 2D as well. Okay. So by putting the Defiant logo on the map, I didn't place a ship. The only thing that was placed is that actual logo, so there's no actual ship there. Tactical maps really are like drawing on paper, not changing the universe at all. The crew navigating to 3D coordinates. The funny thing about that is those coordinates are totally and completely made up. It actually doesn't, they don't actually move to a specific coordinate. It's just random numbers. So no, they don't navigate to 3D coordinates. They just type in 3D coordinates. Thank you for that, Blue Shadow. I will make sure that that gets added. Yes, the Space Center is lots of smoke and mirrors. And hi, Blue Shadow. Thanks for being part of this shindig today. Okay, cool. Yeah, Kelsey Klingon, did I get all of your questions answered? I really wish that I could have like 3D type stuff, but the location of the ship is not tracked in space at all. It's totally and completely hand-waved, smoke and mirrors by the flight director saying this is where you are. The reason why is because if it were tracked in space, that would give less flexibility and more constraint to the flight director. While I recognize that more constraint sometimes is a good thing, in this case, for the flight director to be able to tell the stories that they need to tell effectively, it's better if they are able to bend the laws of space and time to allow them to arrive at a destination very quickly, for them to take a very long time to arrive at their destination. Being able to track their position in space would be really cool, but it would make it so that the flight director would have to respect what's happening in the simulation instead of being able to play God and say when things happen whenever they like. So other spacecraft in the scenario is, again, very hand-wavy. Again, it's entirely based off of the perception of the crew. So if they see a sensor contact on their sensor grid, then they believe that there is another ship out there in space. And, I mean, they can see it right there. And if it moves into their weapons range, and I come here to my targeting core and add a target for them to shoot at, then, oh, well, there you go. They can now shoot at it. There is a little bit of helpfulness if you turn on this add to targeting feature that automatically adds this sensor contact to targeting, but all that this is just a graphic being shown on the sensor grid. It doesn't have any additional context about it. I don't know what systems are on it. I don't know how many crew are on it, or rather Thorium doesn't know what systems are on it. Thorium doesn't know what crew are on it, or what its intentions are, any of that. That's really an oversight on my part. I really should have thought that through just a little bit better when I was designing the whole sensor system. But yeah, that's basically all that it is. That's really the most disappointing thing about Thorium, is the fact that it's not a real game engine. It does not have these entity relationships and doesn't have this universal map of where all of these ship entities are. That's one thing that would be really cool to add sometime in the future, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And if somebody else wants to work on it, great. While I'm on it, if you have any developer friends or if you have developer experience, please feel free to get in touch with me. I would love to have your help with Thorium. I'm working on some developer videos right now, which should step you through the process of building out certain features. So yeah, that would be super helpful if you want to contribute. When it comes to making decisions for additional ships or any of that, it basically is all handled by the flight director. There's very little automation, very little AI. I could point to a couple of specific instances where there is such automation and AI. For example, if I were to make this ship hostile and turn on the battle core, I can make it so that this contact automatically fires, but it just fires on a timer. So there's not really any AI, it's just automation. And that firing it doesn't actually affect their shields at all. The flight director has to control the shields. So again, very much Thorium is flight director centric, so that they have as much power and control as possible. Yeah, there, hey, it just fired, woohoo. Yeah, just for a little bit of context, Thorium is built with Node.js on the back end and React on the front end, and those are the web technologies that it uses, and GraphQL to mix everything together. So if you know anybody that knows those things or wants to learn those things, that's that. Fun little side tangent, I actually started working on Thorium in June of 2016, and the reason why I worked on it, started on it in the first place, is because I wanted to learn React and GraphQL. I had no intention of actually releasing it. I was just using it because I've always built simulator controls to learn how to program better, and that's just what I do. So it's very cool that it's become what it has, and it's really cool that all of you have such great interest in it. So thank you again for joining us today. Yeah, I'll keep answering questions. As long as you've got questions, just throw them up there and I will answer them. Let me just get in here. So when it comes to the sensor card and targeting card interacting, as you saw, when this sensor contact moves into weapons range, it automatically is going to add it as a target down here. And if let me assign this guy to the targeting tactical, so I can target it and shoot at it. So, where is it? You're supposed to be there. Oh, I'm on the wrong flight. I've got to put these guys on the right flight. Okay. And run again. Okay, so this guy's flying around. I can move my mouse to follow it in order to target it. And then I can see that it's targeted. Give me just a second. I'm going to turn off this emulation thing. Okay, I can see that it's targeted on my sensor grid, which is janked up. There we go, that's better. And I can see that it's targeted down here. And when I click this destroy button, this guy is going to blow up. Yep. Another way that they interact is with coordinate targeting. So if I throw a contact onto the sensor grid, and let me come back here really quick and set this other station to be a sensor station. Oh, that looks gross. Oh my gosh, I have not looked at this screen in forever. That's gross. I've got to fix that. Where do I calculate these coordinates? I do that on the sensors grid. So if I come here to this sensor screen and click on this contact, those coordinates show up here, and then I can just type those guys in. 340.52, 363.53, and 926.78. And then it's targeted. I can see that it's... What? Did I type in the coordinates wrong? Oh, I did. Okay, let's try that again. 363.53 and 926.78. Cool. Now it's targeted here, and I can see that it's targeted here, so when they shoot, I'll know exactly what's being shot at. Yeah, so that's one way. Another way that sensors and targeting can work together. Thank you for the love, Kilted Klingon and Pix Vectory and everyone else. I really appreciate it. Sensors is more like the range of the enemy from you, and targeting is where they actually are. Yeah. One thing that is cool about sensors is you can change the weapons range. So if I drag this range, that actually changes the weapons range, which they see on sensors. So on this sensor screen, you can see the weapons range there, and it's just a little bit bigger. But that also does affect the adding to targeting. So if I turn off the coordinate targeting and crank up the weapons range, then this contact appears in weapons range again. Yeah, torpedo loading could be better. There's just a lot of, like, people want to be able to include all of the stuff, and I want to be able to include all of these fancy graphics, so the scrolling is weird. I don't necessarily like it, but whatever. And then you've got this dedicated torpedo loading screen here. Maybe what I should do is make it so that if torpedo loading card is on the same station as the targeting screen, then it you don't load on the targeting screen. That gives you just a little bit of flexibility, so you don't have this scroll, but you just have two fire buttons. Yeah. There's something else I wanted to say. I can't remember what it is. Oh well. Okay. Kilted Klingon asks if thorium plays nice if you run multiple stations on the same physical machine. That should be pretty evident from this. I'm running both of these stations on separate web browser tabs. Or yeah, I have one regular tab, and then I have another that's an incognito window. And I could do the same thing if I were to pull up Firefox and Safari. Again, your mileage may vary with Firefox and Safari, since I'm developing specifically towards the Thorium kiosk, and that runs Chrome. Chrome is what I'm developing in, but you can still, for the most part, run Thorium using any browser. Just give this a second to load and come back here, and there's my Firefox client. So I can have this guy show up on Firefox. Ta-da! And works just fine. I know that Safari does have some issues with text fields, and that's something that I'm going to fix eventually and get around to it. One thing that might be helpful to know, just a little pro tip, when you're on this credit screen, you can actually change the name of your client by clicking on the Thorium logo and then clicking this Client ID button. So now this shows up as Firefox here. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, yeah, go ahead, hit me up with any more questions. I'll hang out for another 5 minutes and then we'll call it good for Reels. I have a question that I want to answer for you guys. What is my favorite feature of Thorium? That's one that I'm actually going to have to think about for a second, so I'll think about it while you guys ask questions. That one's really hard. There are just so many great things that just kind of fit together in really fun ways. I love the keyboard. At the Space Centers, they have these sound keyboards that let you press a key and it plays a sound effect. And while I'm answering this question about my favorite feature, Kilted Klingon, can you explain just a little bit what you mean by a quick highlight of how to create cards from scratch? Are you talking about like in code or some other way? Because if I was just answering your question as it is, I would be answering it based on code, because I don't know any other way. I don't know what specific way you mean. Anyway, these keyboards are fun features. I can add a key, and then I can choose any one of the events. These are the same events that you use for the timeline. And I'll just grab the play a sound here, and I can choose any sound I want. Like this Borg assimilate vessel, I guess. That's rude. Beep sound. And then what I would do is set up one screen with the keyboard. One client would run the keyboard. Let me do that really quick. You be the keyboard, and I'll have you be sound effects player. And then here's the keyboard, and there's the sound player. If I hit this key, hang on a sec. Yeah, you can hear that sound effect play. Ain't that cool? Justin asks, can you have multiple keyboards attached to one host? You know, that's one I don't think you can do. Any keyboard input is going to show up as just a generic keyboard input, and it would play a sound effect. So not recommended. Have your sound player running on a different computer. One thing that I do want to have is a keyboard and sound player mixed together in one, so that you only have to run one client in order to get the sound players working. But yeah, at the Space Centers, they do have separate computers that run sound players, or the keyboard rather. In fact, Emmerich's made a program that runs on Raspberry Pi that allows you to use a Raspberry Pi for both your sound keyboard and the sound player. So that's pretty slick. Let me make sure that I got everything. Okay, yeah, I can do a quick highlight of how to create cards. What card should I create? That's the question. I'll create a card that, oh, I don't know. It's hard for me to keep everything in my head. So I'm going to be running development version of Thorium, and open up my code editor. Here it is. And again, I'm going to be creating some training videos that'll cover this in much more detail. But all of the cards live in this client, source, components, views folder. And there actually is a template right down here. I'm actually going to update the template so that it works better with new features soon. But I can just duplicate this template. We'll just do a quick engine card or a shield card. I have to add it to this index.js file so that the rest of Thorium knows that it exists. The nice thing about the template is it includes the core and a data getting thing. So all I have to do is just update this template data thing here. In fact, I'm going to do a quick find and replace. Anywhere it says template, I'm going to change to shield. Whoops, that's not what I wanted because I want to keep the caps. So, and then lowercase template turns into lowercase shield. And I use GraphQL in order to get the data, so I have to write the query here. I should be able to go like that. You freaking out? Is there? Yeah, there is a shields query. So, and I just put in the information that I want to get, like the, hang on, why are you freaking out? Oh, yeah. I've just got to make sure I get all of the right information. Okay, shield is correct. So I'll get the ID, and I'll get the, my autocomplete isn't working super well, so I'm actually gonna look in the backend code since I have it right here. So I can get the state and the frequency of the shield. So I'll just come here and get the state and the frequency. This will be really simple, so it doesn't have to a whole lot. This query is going to get the initial data. The subscription is going to get any updates to the data if anything changes. And then down here, it's going to grab the shield from my query. I'm going to get just the first shield system, so we're only going to worry about the first one, and then pass that into our shield component that I'm pulling from the shield file. And then I also have to update this so that it properly updates the data whenever there are changes to the data. So shields update. And that should be it for this screen. Now I can come over here. I need to rename this so that it is the proper name. And I can grab the data from there. I want to get the shield ID, and I want to get the shield state and the frequency. And I can just use React here to output that information to the screen. So if the state is true, then it's going to output raised. And if the state is false, it's going to output lowered. And we'll have a button that will toggle the shield. And then so very simple screen. It doesn't have any interactivity yet. I will show the interactivity in a minute. But now what I can do is wait for this to reload because of the changes that I made. Pull up the client. Go to, sorry, I forgot what station it was. It's command? Okay. So go to this command screen. Get rid of these extra cards that I don't need and add that shield card. And it should show up right over here. Oh, that's a cool new feature that I'm working on. I don't know that it's going to apply to the general Thorium user. It's more for the space adventures, but and go to this card. So it doesn't have an icon, so I'd have to add an icon, and I can see that the shield is lowered, and there's the frequency because it's pulling that data. And then I can add the mutation, the GraphQL mutation, which changes the data. So let me write that really quick. I've got this GraphQL playground, which lets me test out mutations and make sure that they work properly. So there's a shield raised and a shield lowered. So I'm going to have to write both of these, but I'll just have a shield raised for now. And all I have to do is just put in the ID of the shield. I think that's all I need. Let me check. Yeah, it's freaking out because I haven't defined that. In GraphQL, you have to define all of your variables. And there's that. So I'm using a library called Apollo for GraphQL, and it provides this mutation component that I can just wrap around the things that I want to use. I have to wrap my GraphQL statement in this GQL tag so it gets the proper formatting and stuff. And then I give it the action, and when I click on this, it's just going to perform the action, which is going to be to raise the shields. And I have to put in the ID since that variable is required. And then finally, I have to import that GQL tag. Sorry if I'm going really fast or not explaining what I'm doing very well. Something weird's going on. This looks right to me. I don't know why it's giving me those errors. Yeah, it's totally right. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so this should raise the shields when I click on it. And I'm just going to wrap it in a div so that it goes on its own line. There's that. So let's wait for this. That's not right. It's React Apollo. Okay, I'll let that refresh really quick. Yeah, when it comes to creating custom cards, this is the basic process. I get the data, I display the data, I have some way to manipulate the data. Obviously the cards are going to be much more complicated because I'm pulling in graphics and doing animations, and sometimes I have to connect with the server in different weird, interesting ways, but this is the basic gist. So I click the Raise Shields button and it raised, hey. And if I click the button again, it doesn't do anything because they're already raised. So I'd have to add that lowered mutation in there. But that's the gist. So yeah, I could answer it more in depth, but we're over time now. So if there are any lingering questions that I can answer quickly, I would be happy to answer those. And if there's anything else, hit me up on Discord and I'll answer them over text. But yeah, you guys are great. I really love this community. I think it's so cool how random people that have either gone to the Space Center or just happen upon Thorium have joined, and having these conversations and asking about how things work, it gets me excited, and I know it gets other people in this Utah Space Center community excited. So thank you guys, you're amazing. Yeah, I will be posting in the Discord server when those developer videos are up. Like Blue Shadow mentioned, the Web Dev Guild is a website that I put together kind of hoping to get students on a path to learning development into working on Thorium. So yeah, if there's anything specific you want me to cover in the tutorial, the developer videos, let me know. I've completed 5 videos and I have another 7 videos that I've recorded but need to edit. And I'll start putting those up shortly. The goal is to make it so that the videos are all very small, so that they're easy to consume, so that you can watch them really fast, and so that I can remake them if anything ever changes or if I need to clarify something. So, should be good. I did not know that you can't use Command plus key sound on a Windows machine. I use a Mac, if that's not obvious. There's that little apple. So, sorry about that. I don't test on Windows machines. Hopefully it works. That's my goal. Cross my fingers. That's kind of my mantra for everything Thorium. Okay. Yeah, Thorium does run on a Raspberry Pi. I haven't tested it a whole lot, but you should be able to run it on a Raspberry Pi, I guess. Okay, that's all I've got. I'm going to turn off. Everyone have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.